Duff Chapter 8. Duff Chapter 8 deals with two main issues. The first is voice. The second are some extra nouns. The extra nouns bit is okay, but the voice bit, actually this book is incredibly frustrating. So I'm going to ask you largely to ditch the textbook as an explanation. I'll put some further notes up with this video on Canvas, and then I want you to ignore it and not worry about the terminology. He calls them deponent, and then he footnotes and says he's going to call them middle. This is something people are still writing books about. New Testament Greek gets really worried about this in a way classical Greek really doesn't. And I think I want to try and explain them in a slightly more simple manner so you don't have to worry about the grammar too much. There's an easy way of thinking about this and a harder way. The easy way is active and middle, different conjugations in essence. By conjugations we mean groups. So two different sets of endings for Greek verbs. Verbs are either one or the other. And to all intents and purposes, this is going to do you. If you're interested in thinking about this a bit further, then watch the next slide. If you're not interested, I'll try and put a note about which bit of this video to skip. The thorough version is we've really got to think about agency and what we call about valency. And that is the idea that you've got active where you as a participant are engaged in a verb. And you've got a kind of spectrum of agency. And active is where you're engaged and possibly doing something to someone else. And in the middle, you've got things along the lines of reflexive or self-interested. You've got verbs where there is no object. So the thing that's being acted on is not available. Things like go or walk. There's no object to those verbs. And then at the far end, you've got passive, where things are done to you. And the theory goes that Greek really cares about this idea of agency and valency. Agency is who's doing something, valency is how many people are involved in that action. And that this section in the middle is the deponent or middle verbs. If you're interested in that, send me a message and I'll give you some stuff to chase up. Fundamentally, I'm not sure it's that helpful, except for a very few verbs that we'll look at again in chapter 15. So first of all, let's think about the form. You've learned luor, lues, lue, luomen, luete, luusin. I untie, etc. The middle verbs are just a separate set of endings. Luomai, luer, luetai, luometha, luesthe, luontai. I ransom. So, almost all verbs only fall into the active or middle category. Luo is one of the very few that has both, and that's one of the reasons we teach it, because we don't have to muddle up your verbs. If you're interested in the long-winded version of this, then ransom is supposed to be the self-interested version of freeing. You're doing it with your own purpose. Otherwise, if you look in the back of the book, pick a page at random. I'm picking a page at slight random. I'm picking page 304. You've got a range of books. Blasphemeo, that's active because it's like luo. Blepo, active like luo. Boulamai, middle like luomai. You can tell from the dictionary form which category it is. You just know which set of endings to apply, and you don't have to worry about the impact on ending. So in essence, all you're thinking about is two sets of endings for your normal verbs. Verbs are either active or middle, except for about half a dozen verbs that we'll cover as special examples, one of which is luo. You do have to think about the other tenses and indeed the other moods. I'm going to fill the other tenses in here. If you want the other moods, these are available to you on page 92 of Duff. You've got luamai, luer, luatai, luamatha, luesther, luantai. The same kind of rules apply as happened with other verbs. The imperfect and the aorist both have augments. The aorist and future both have sigmas. In terms of endings, the future still takes the same endings as the present after that sigma. The imperfect still takes very similar endings that are related but different. The aorist takes related endings with an alpha in them. So once you know your principles of Greek verbs, the middle ones aren't that different, it's just a separate system. So I apologise that there are a lot more endings to think about, but don't worry, because once you've got these systems in place, Greek has very little left to throw at you, however big the verb gets.